I've wanted to hold this cover in my hands for over 20 years now because this is a genuine Pony Express cover that was mailed out of Fort Bridger, Wyoming. Now, I don't actually own this cover. It's being lent to me by a friend in order to make this video, and I am eternally grateful to them for doing so because it is awe-inspiring to actually have a piece of American history like this in my hands. Before I jump into talking about this specific cover, I'm going to tell you a little bit of the backstory about the Pony Express and why it's so important to American history. For an iconic piece of the American West, the Pony Express was an extraordinarily short-lived endeavor. It only lasted for 18 months between April of 1860 and October of 1861. The express ran from Sacramento, California to St. Joseph, Missouri, and they would load letters into a mochila, a very special sort of saddlebag that was invented for the Pony Express. And then a rider would ride at full gallop all the way from Sacramento to St. Joseph or vice versa in order to get the mail there in just 10 days. In order to accomplish this feat, they established stage stops every 10 to 15 miles, all the way along the route, and at each stop, a rider was able to get a fresh horse and a bite to eat before they continued along their way. In order to decrease weight on the horse, riders were required to be under 125 pounds, and every 100 miles or so, they would switch from one rider to another in order to make sure that everybody was at peak performance. There are 251 covers that are still known to exist that traveled this route in those 18 months. And this is in no way a paid endorsement, but if you ever want to learn about all of those covers, this book right here, The Pony Express of Postal History by Kramer, Walsky, and Frajola, is an absolutely exhaustive census of not only the covers that are known to travel that route, but all of the markings that are associated with Pony Express covers. It is a stunning piece of scholarship. There are so many stunning covers among that 251 number, and each one of them is almost like a little work of art. Like this one right here that was sent to Abraham Lincoln, who was the sitting president at the time that this was mailed to him. Or this cover right here that has a Civil War patriotic cachet. This beautiful example to Switzerland sold just this last April for $885,000 in the H.R. Harmer sale. The Pony Express even issued its own stamps in red, green, and black, and they are all known to exist both off and on cover and are one of my absolute favorite private express company stamps. Now, I've coveted this pony cover specifically for many, many years because of this little marking right here at the upper left-hand corner that shows that it originated in Fort Bridger, Wyoming, and is one of two known examples to have originated in Wyoming. The other one is right here. That one also originated out of Fort Bridger, and there are no other known examples that were mailed from the state of Wyoming while the Pony Express was being run. There are, however, two other pieces of Pony Express history that, although they didn't originate in Wyoming, do have Wyoming ties. There also exists this letter from the president of the company that owned the Pony Express, the Central Overland Californian Pikes Peak Express Company, to the sutler at Fort Bridger, Judge William Carter. This letter details a reduction in rates, which was important to Judge Carter because Fort Bridger was one of the stops along the Pony Express route. But the most famous piece of Pony Express history connected to Wyoming is this cover. While this cover was being carried along the route by a pony rider, he was attacked by Native Americans and killed along the way. The mochila pouch containing his express letters was lost along the way and lay on the plains of Wyoming for well over a year before they were rediscovered and then forwarded on in 1862. There is a manuscript notation on the cover that says recovered from mail stolen by Indians 1860. And this cover is one of only two known covers to still exist from that stolen pouch of mail. It's even more rare because this 10-cent green Washington stamp that is on there was no longer valid for postage because the 1857 series of stamps had been demonetized during the Civil War. This incredible piece of American history now resides at the Smithsonian National Postal Museum, where it was donated several years ago by its then owner, Bill Gross. This pony cover also carries stamps that would be demonetized less than a year later, the 3-cent Washington of the 1857 issue. So let's get into exactly what all the markings on this cover mean. First of all, those two stamps tell us that this is a double rate letter, meaning that it weighed somewhere between a half and a full 1 ounce. We can further narrow that down by this marking right underneath it that says Pony Express paid $7.50. At that time, the rate on the Pony Express was $2.50 per quarter ounce, which means that this cover weighed somewhere between a half and 3/4 of an ounce and cost in today's money $267, an incredible amount of cash to mail a letter. At the upper left, you have the origination of Fort Bridger NT. Now that NT stood for Nebraska Territory, which is actually wrong. At that time, Fort Bridger resided in Utah Territory. It's not uncommon to see mistaken territory designations like this on items from this time period because those territorial lines were changing all of the time during the early 1860s. The fact that this originated in Fort Bridger means that it is a way cover. By way cover, it means that it was picked up along the route of the Pony Express as the express was being ridden, and these covers are much more rare than your standard Pony Express cover. That is another reason that there are only 2 known covers known to exist that originated in Wyoming. Underneath that, you have that date, August 31st, 1860, which is when this was placed with the rider to continue its way down the Pony Express. And we know that it arrived just 6 days later in St. Joseph, Missouri by these 2 cancels showing September 6th, St. Joseph, Missouri. That is a distance of 910 miles on horseback in just 6 days, which is an incredibly impressive feat. It also received my very favorite part of this cover in St. Joseph, this running pony carmine hand stamp that was applied in St. Joseph, Missouri, again on September 6th. There are only 10 known examples of this carmine running pony hand stamp, and the stamp was only used for 1 month in August and September of 1860. And this makes this the latest known example of an eastbound carmine running pony hand stamp. All of those factors make this Pony Express cover an absolute rarity, as all Pony Express covers are, and you could expect on the market to pay anywhere between $8,000 and $10,000 for a cover like this. And that $7.50 fee on the bottom is why there are so few of these pony covers, because it was an absolute flop. They never made any money running the Pony Express and only lost money the entire time, even though they were charging for this cover the equivalent of $267 for the Express fee. This fee would drop as the Express ran on, but it never got to the point where it was financially reasonable. And in the last month that the Pony Express ran, October of 1861, the Transcontinental Telegraph was completed when it was connected in Salt Lake City, and this made coast-to-coast communication almost simultaneous, as well as at a fraction of the cost of what the Pony Express could offer. And as a result, after all this time, the only thing we have left of this iconic American West experience are artifacts just like this one.